5 teams that I think had the most interesting offseason in the NBA. Now, this doesn't mean that I think that they had the best offseason or that they are going to win a championship. Nothing like that. This is both interesting in terms of good pickups and good transactions, but also some things that are just head scratchers. So these are 5. I don't know if I'm going to particularly do it in an order, but here are 5 of the teams that I think had the most interesting offseasons so far. And I know we're still early, but all the big names are pretty much done. All right, the Los Angeles Clippers. The Clippers, of course, had a really good season this last year, and I think that now that they are healthy and you see what Kawhi Leonard could do, I mean, he came back and was really effective in that playoff series against the Nuggets this year. They get him back. They sign James Harden to a 2-year extension, so now you have James Harden and Kawhi there for at least a couple more years. You really don't have any departures so far from this team. Nick Batum is signing back with them, and they get the best center that was available. I mean, I guess you could argue between Brook Lopez and Clint Capella, but I think that they got the guy that they wanted. Now, it's interesting. What makes this interesting is because the Lakers were the team that everyone, I guess, assumed or thought that Brook Lopez was going to go to. That was the consensus, that he was going to go to the Lakers because they needed a big, they needed a center. And Brook Lopez kind of shook everyone and said, you know what? Nope, I'm going to the Clippers. So I think that all of these contracts are kind of lining up, that they have a couple of years. Okay, Brook Lopez signs a 2-year deal. Nick Batum signs a 2-year deal. James Harden had a deal. He signs a 2-year extension. But now the next 2 to 3 years are what the Clippers think that they can maximize their opportunities here in the next 2 years, and that's what they're looking at. But Brook Lopez is a good center, and I think that adding some depth to it, and it's a player that can hit some threes. So the Clippers here at number 5, I think, had a very interesting offseason just by adding a player, and they seem like they're going all in for the next 2 to 3 years. How about the Dallas Mavericks? Now, I know that a lot of this happened pre-draft season, obviously, with Luka Doncic being traded. I think the Mavericks have had the most interesting, year? I mean, calendar year. From going to a NBA Finals, getting beaten 5 by the Celtics, but still getting to the NBA Finals to, 6 months later, trading Luka Doncic to the Lakers, getting Anthony Davis, stumbling upon the number 1 overall pick, and then getting what most consider a generational player and a guy that's going to be able to play in this league for 15 years in Cooper Flagg. So the Mavericks have had a really interesting offseason, and they signed Kyrie. They signed D'Angelo Russell, who's going to be the starting point guard, at least for the beginning, because I think that when people are talking about the Mavericks, it seems to me that some people are just forgetting about the fact that they don't have Kyrie for a good portion of this season. I mean, he got hurt and will be out for, at least, the trade deadline, imaginably. So I think that some people are kind of underestimating that and the fact that Kyrie's not going to be there. But they do sign D'Angelo Russell to a 2-year deal, and he'll be able to, I think, give them some production, as Anthony Davis is obviously, Anthony Davis at this point in his career is kind of just always battling an injury. He had a couple of years where he was healthy, but D'Angelo Russell, I think, will give him some points. Cooper Flagg is going to be a very interesting player in Dallas. You extend Kyrie for 3 years. You have Daniel Gafford and Lively and Anthony Davis. You're going to have a top 5 defense, I think, in the league next year if all of these guys are healthy. Now, I don't know about the guards. defensively. Clay's lost a step, obviously. Kyrie was never a great defender. He's also hurt. D'Angelo Russell is not a great defender. But nobody's going to want to go to the paint against this Dallas Mavericks team. But the last year has been a just kind of crazy, hectic year for the Dallas Mavericks organization and their fans. So I think that they belong here on one of the teams that had one of the most interesting off seasons. Getting Cooper Flagg was a gift after the Luka Doncic debacle, and they looked out on a generational player. And then you extend Kyrie for 3 years, 3-year extension to Kyrie. He's battling an injury. You bring in D'Angelo Russell. I think that they have a pretty interesting offseason. All right, let's keep going. The Orlando Magic. I have them as one of the most interesting teams so far. This team is interesting to me because I think that they feel like they could really compete in the Eastern Conference. And a lot of these teams in the East, I think, are looking at the conference going, okay, Indiana just got to the NBA Finals. Their star's hurt. The defending champions, the Boston Celtics in our conference, their star is hurt. We don't know what's going on with the Knicks. They're hiring a new coach now, but it's late. Like what happens with the Knicks? Giannis's team and the Bucks don't really have anyone. So who is there to compete with? Like the Cavs are a 64-win team this year, but got destroyed by the Pacers. So I think that they were looking at the landscape of the Eastern Conference and go, you know what? I think that we can compete here and we can maybe get to an NBA Finals. Now, I don't think they have done anything crazy. I don't think that they've done anything wild. Obviously, they go get Desmond Bane, trade him for Cole Anthony, KCP, but the multiple first-round picks is where it's like, okay, you got to get something from this. Hopefully you can get a top 3 seed, get to an Eastern Conference Finals, because you are giving away your first-round pick next year and your first-round pick in 2028. So it's an interesting offseason for the Magic. They see that I think they see opportunity here, which I'm going to be honest with you guys, I like that. I like when a team is not afraid to go after it. Sometimes teams in sports seem so hesitant to do things because they just obviously want to worry about making as much money as they possibly can, but a lot of teams worry about bottoming out. Now, the Magic haven't been great. They got swept by the Celtics this year in the playoffs, but I think you have a decent core there in Orlando, and when you see an opportunity, you have to go after it. I do think that this raises the stakes for the Magic this season. And I'm not saying that because Desmond Bane is, an all-star or a guy that's a first-team All-NBA, but what I mean by that is Desmond Bane coming to the team, and this GM, this organization, this front office is clearly saying that they think they can do something this season. And I think that raises the expectations. It's going to raise the pressure in the building. And I think that's good because some of these teams I feel like just sit back and collect checks. I mean, the Charlotte Hornets and the Washington Wizards have never been good in my lifetime. You had Gilbert Arenas. That was the last time I felt like the Wizards were relevant until John Wall got there for a couple of years. So the Magic, even though they might not be championship contenders, I like the fact that they're like, you know what, we're going to go after a swing. We think we might be a piece away. They have Tyus Jones also signed to him, but Desmond Bane and Tyus Jones, you lose KCP, you lose Gary Harris, you lose Cole Anthony with the trade, and you lose a couple of picks, but you're saying right now that you think you have an opportunity to do something pretty awesome here. So I like that, and I do think that they're really interesting. All right, the final two teams that I think had the most interesting off seasons are two teams that I think can really compete for an NBA title next year. Let's start with the Denver Nuggets. This is a team that was too cheap a couple years ago. After they win the championship, they don't re-sign Bruce Brown. They let a couple of players walk, and they're just not the same. What do? All right, they're going to say, Michael Porter Jr., we're trading you. They trade him with the Nets, and they get Cam Johnson. Now, numbers-wise, these are two guys that are pretty similar. Now, Cam Johnson had his best season of his career this year in 2024, 2025. This last season, he averaged 18.8 a game on 39% shooting and 47% from the field. So, and I've always been a Cam Johnson fan. I thought that when the Suns got to the NBA Finals in 2021, I thought that was a team that Cam Johnson, I mean, he had a pretty big impact in. And he wasn't the star player. You know, that was D-Book, and Chris Paul was on that team, and so they kind of took the headlines, and DeAndre Ayton, the number one overall pick. But I thought Cam Johnson was just a glue guy that was really good. And so getting him, I think, is going to be a net positive for the Denver Nuggets. And I also think that there are times where players just need to move on. You just need a little bit of change. And Michael Porter had been with the Nuggets for a while. It just felt like this team needed a change, and you weren't going to get rid of Jokic or Murray. So who's that next guy? Well, that's Michael Porter Jr. All right, they also bring back Bruce Brown, which is a guy that helped them win a championship. Tim Hardaway Jr., this is interesting as well, because he's older. He's an older player, still a catch-and-shoot guy that can still knock down some threes, so that I think that gives you some depth, which Denver did not have this year. They did not have the depth. Their starting five, I think, could compete for a championship, but they did not have any depth. And then they go get Jonas Valanciunas, who, again, is a depth guy. So the Nuggets are all in. The Nuggets said, all right, we understand that maybe our window into championships and winning multiple championships is closing, and that window of opportunity is not as open or not as long as it used to be. So I understand that. We're going to go after it. The second apron thing and has really, I think, had teams kind of second guessing, and people are saying right now, it's like, Oklahoma City is going to be a dynasty. And I've said this on the podcast multiple times, and I'm just not quite there yet. I'm not there to say that this Oklahoma City team was a dynasty, because all of these other teams have been what we've thought were like, oh yeah, they're dynasties. And Shea just signs a contract extension where he's the highest paid player in the NBA, and he's going to be making like $70 million a year 2 years from now. And when you get to that point, we're expecting this cap to go up, and we're expecting all this money to come in, but when you tie a huge percentage of your cap to one guy, and other players want to get paid, and we've also seen this, guys, we've seen this before. I thought about this today, going back to the Phoenix Suns team. There was a time where the Phoenix Suns were in the NBA Finals, and they had a young Devin Booker, a young DeAndre Ayton, a young Mikal Bridges, a young Cam Johnson. The only really old guy on that team was Chris Paul. And we were like, all right, even though they didn't win the NBA Finals, I think that there was the consensus was this was going to be a team that can compete for multiple years. And what has happened since? It's been a disaster in Phoenix. So the Nuggets, they're not afraid. They're like, you know what? We're going after it. We're not going to sit back and let everyone just kind of crown Oklahoma City a dynasty right now. Like, we're going to go after this because we pushed them to 7 games. And, in those series, in any series like that, when it goes the wrong way, but it goes to a game 7, you think, make a couple plays here and there in that last game, and you are in the Western Conference Finals. So I think Denver's done a really good job this offseason, and they are clearly going after it. And I think that they should be considered probably the second best team in the Western Conference behind Oklahoma City. All right. And finally, the team that I think has had the most interesting offseason this year are the Houston Rockets. They are the team that has had the most transactions. They're sending players, they're signing players, they're trading players. There's so much going on in Houston right now. But when all the dust settles and when this stuff is official here in the next couple of days, I think you look at this Houston Rockets team, guys, and you're like, this is a really good team. And this was a team that should have, I think if you had veteran leaders on this team, if you had a veteran team, I think that they should have beat the Warriors. And whatever happens after that, is a different story. But I do think that this is a team that could have beat the Warriors. And you have a coach that has gone to an NBA Finals. And now you bring in Kevin Durant, who on its own is an incredible player still. Still averaging, he's the best pull-up jump shooter in the NBA this season. He's replacing, by the way, Jalen Green, who had similar games but not as efficient. I mean, Jalen Green shot a lot of mid-range jumpers. He wasn't very efficient with that. Kevin Durant is the most efficient, and he hits more shots. So you're going to get the same, I think, style of player, just a lot better, refined, finished product. You add Clint Capella, he comes back, that gives you some size. You re-sign Steven Adams. Jeff Green, Jabari Smith is an extension. Fred VanVleet, who, what kind of player is he now? I'm not sure, but he is a veteran presence on the team that has played a lot of basketball, and it can kind of be that driver of the offense. And then you get Dorian Finney-Smith, which was a big deal because the Lakers wanted him back, and he chose to go to Houston. What all of this is signaling to me is that teams and players in the league truly believe that Houston could win a championship this year. And whether it's Clint Capella or Dorian Finney-Smith, when they saw that Kevin Durant was going there, and they're looking at this, and they're like, all right, so we have Sengun, we have Amin Thompson. Now you re-sign Jabari Smith and Steven Adams. You have Fred VanVleet re-signed, and you're losing Jalen Green, which I think is obviously he's a young player that I don't think his game's finished in terms of being refined. I think he's still got a lot to do in terms of that, but he's a good player, and I think he's going to do well. And then you lose Dillon Brooks, who obviously is really good defensively, but I'm going to be honest with you. There's a lot of players, or there's a lot of teams that have a guy like Dillon Brooks, Draymond Green, Dennis Rodman. Like they have these guys that are, I guess, quote-unquote enforcers. Bill Laimbeer, obviously, kind of most famously kind of the enforcer of the Bad Boy Pistons. But I don't know how much Dillon Brooks' personality rubs off positively on the locker room. I don't know. There are times that I watch some of his antics, and it's like, I don't know if players are sticking up for him. I don't know. If Draymond gets into it with someone, there's always going to be somebody to come get him, right? Sometimes it felt like Dillon Brooks was on an island with a lot of it. So the Rockets, to me, had the most interesting and, in this case, the most impactful offseason in the NBA. So there you have it. My 5 most interesting. Now, a lot of them are probably most impactful. Of course, the Nuggets, Magic, and Rockets, I think, made some significant impacts. But the Mavericks and the Clippers, I think, had a pretty interesting offseason. You could throw in, like, the Lakers swung and missed on a lot of players, on a lot of bigs that they wanted. But, it is what it is. All right, so that's going to be it for this video. And be sure to subscribe. A lot of people say that, but hit that like button if you liked the content, because there's going to be some more coming out here soon. So, all right, catch you in the next video. Peace.